Hello, and welcome to the Windows 2003 Server Series Local Security Policy. In this video, I will show you how to set local policies to allow for enforcing password restrictions, allowing users and groups certain rights, how to turn on auditing for different events, and how to change some general security options. These local policies only apply to the local machine. When you install Active Directory, you can use group policies to enforce all of these settings and more throughout your entire domain. That will of course be demonstrated in another video. To get to the local security policy editor, we go through the Start menu, we go up to Programs, we go over to Administrative Tools, and Local Security Policy. This brings up the Local Security Settings MMC, Microsoft Management Console. You will see in the MMC here on the left-hand side we have several different containers. Account policies and local policies, the top two, are the ones we're going to focus on for today's video. Under Account Policies is where we start talking about different password policies and account lockout policies. So if we click on the Password Policy container here on the left-hand side, you will see on the right-hand pane we will get the different options that we can change or enforce for password security. Like we can actually enforce the password history. If I double-click on Password History, a dialog box will come up and allow me to make a change. If I put just say 3 here, the server will now remember the last 3 passwords that the user used, and the user will not be able to use the same password within those 3. So if you use, say, the password John for the first password, he could not use John again until his 4th change of password. Next, you'll see the maximum password age. It is set at 42 days by default. You can change that. That just means that the user has to change their password at least every 42 days. And then we have minimum age of password, which means that the user at this point with 0 days can change their password 3 times in the same day. If we set that to say 1, then the user can no longer change their password twice in the same day. If they change it today, they have to change it within the next 42 days, but they can't change it today. They have to wait till at least tomorrow to change it. Then we got minimum password length. If I double click on that, this allows me to say set 6. We'll say I want my password to be at least 6 characters long. Nothing shorter will be acceptable. And then there's this bad boy. Password must meet complexity requirements. It is disabled by default. If you do enable this one, you will probably lose a lot of friends in your network. It makes it very difficult to come up with a password, but it does make your passwords more secure. For instance, you cannot use any or even part of your user account name in the password. The password has to be at least 6 characters long, and it must contain characters from 3 of the following categories: English uppercase characters A through Z, English lowercase characters A through Z, base 10 digits 0 through 9, or non-alpha characters. In other words, you have to have at least 3 of the 4 categories in your password at all times to make it a complete password. And last but not least, there's store passwords using reversible encryption. Even Microsoft does not suggest you enable this unless you have some sort of legacy software sitting on your server that needs to be able to read your users' passwords. Generally, passwords are stored in a one-way encrypted hash, which means there's no way of taking the hash and actually reversing it back into the password. So don't even worry about that one. So now we'll move on to account lockout policies. You will notice by default there is actually no account lockout policy enabled. In order to enable a lockout policy, we really only need to change the middle one. The other 2 you'll see in a minute will change on their own when we change this one. So if we want the account to be locked after 3 invalid login attempts and we click Apply, it will automatically come up and say, hey, if you do that, you want to change the other 2, like the account lockout duration and the counter reset, to at least 30 minutes. If you do this way, if the user cannot get to an administrator to re-enable their account, within 30 minutes they'll be able to try to log in again on their own. So we'll click OK and Apply, OK. And now if anybody tries to log into our server and they have 3 bad failed login attempts in a row, it will automatically lock that account. And now we'll move on. We'll close up our account policies and we'll move on to our local policies. Here we can start doing some auditing. If we go to the auditing container, you will see the different options we have for auditing. Auditing is kind of a way of monitoring what's going on my server. Like if you look at the top one here, Audit Account Logon Events. In other words, this is set to success. So anytime anyone successfully logs into my server, it will throw an event into my event log, which I can then view with my event viewer. If we double click on this, you'll see we have 2 different options. We can audit the attempts of successes and failures. Myself, I would rather see all the failures because I want to know who's not being able to successfully log on my server. Is someone attempting to log on and shouldn't be? I want to see this stuff. So we'll click Apply there, and OK, now you will see that the policy is set for success and failure auditing of logon attempts. Another good one that I like to set is the audit account management. I like to check to see what's going on with my account management. I want to know if someone's trying to add themselves to the administrators group or if someone is attempting to change their privileges. One of the things that hackers like to do is they like to get a Joe Blow user account that really has very little access on a server, and they use that then with some hacking tools to try to escalate the privileges of that particular user into the administrative role, and once they do that, they have complete control over your system. I like to be able to see those events just to make sure that that's not happening. If you see a whole bunch of failures, I want to know why, and I want to know immediately. That's one of the good things about auditing. So that's kind of how you do auditing, and you can audit any of these events. I would not turn on auditing blanket audit and just turn them all on, because you will fill up your event viewer very quickly, and then it's hard to determine which events you really want to focus on. What I would do, though, is just say you have a reason to suspect someone's breaking into, say, the finance folder or trying to access stuff they shouldn't access. You might want to turn on like the object access auditing failures, not successes, because then every time somebody actually successfully gets to their file, it's going to throw an event in the log. And I don't think you really want to see that generally. But you might want to know failures, so you might turn that on. You may turn it on the whole time or just when you're suspecting something. And then if you don't really want to see those all the time, you might just be able to come back in and turn them off at any time. So you can go through and change that on any of these policies if you'd like. So now let's move on to user rights. If we go over to user rights here on the right-hand pane, you'll see in the left-hand pane we have a lot of options of things that we can assign rights for users to be able to do, like just change the system time. If you see that you need a user specifically to change the system time, and you don't want to add them to the power users group, and you don't want to add them to the administrators group, you just want the person to be able to change the system time, well, you can go to Add Users and Groups, and you could either type in the user, Todd, if you want, and check name, and it will show up. Or if you'd like, you can do Advanced and Find Now, and it will show you all of the users and groups on your server that you can put into that role. So I will just click Todd and click OK and OK. And now Todd can change the system time without being all-powerful administrator or even in the power users group. Even though you can just add a user like this to the policy, that is not the best practice. The best way to do that would have been to have created a group called Time Changers maybe, and then add Todd to that Time Changers group, and then grant the group the policy right to change the system time. That way in the future, if I ever have someone else that needs to be able to change the time and not have administrative rights, I just have to add them to the Time Changers group. So anyway, that's the general idea of adding user rights to a specific group or user. There are so many of them here that I'm not going to go through them all, but you can get an idea of the different things that you're allowed to do. You can allow someone to log on locally if you'd like, or you could deny them to log on locally if you'd like. You can even give the person the ability to shut down the system. Generally, only administrators, power users, and backup operators can actually shut down a Windows 2003 server. But again, I could double-click on that and add a specific user or group and give them the right to be able to shut down my server so that I don't have to just give them the full-blown administrative rights just to be able to shut down the system. So now we'll move on to the last topic of the video today, the security options. And you'll see when we click on the security options folder over here on the left-hand side, the right-hand side gives us quite a few options for different security-related issues that can happen on our server that we can restrict. I'm not going to go through them all because there is quite an extensive list here, but I'll go through a few to give you an idea of the different things that you can do. For example, from here you could rename the administrator account or rename the guest account for that matter. Reasons you might want to do that are because every Windows server ever built has an administrator account and a guest account built in. It does give hackers 50% of what they need to break into your system. They've got the usernames. They just need the passwords. You can also you can prevent users from installing print drivers. You can restrict CD-ROM or floppy drive access to only logged-in local users. You can, here's a good one. You can make it so it does not display the last user that logged in when they hit Control-Delete. Generally, when you hit Control-Delete, it shows the last user that successfully logged into that server, giving you a username. Now it will come up blank and blank, and you always have to type in the password and the username. You can get a message that pops up every time someone logs in. You can also clear out the swap file, which is a thing that a lot of people like to do when you shut down the server. Because you used to be able to shut down a server, grab the swap file, and peruse it for valuable information about that server. So now it'll be an empty file, actually, after the server shuts down. So you can see there are a lot of security related issues that you can enable and disable to your like or taste and your server to make it the way you want it to be with the local security settings policy editor. So anyhow, now you have learned how to set local policies and to allow for enforcing password restrictions, allowing user and groups certain rights, how to set up auditing for different events, and how to set some general security options in Windows 2003 Server using the local security policy settings editor. I hope this video